Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our show. This is a run-through of Star Trek DS9. We're not talking about Discovery in this one. We are up to the episode called Ties of Blood and Water. The 19th episode of the 5th season aired on April 14th, 1997. Teleplay goes to Robert Hewitt Wolfe. Story credit goes to Edmund Newton and Robin Slocum, directed by Avery Brooks. In this episode, Kira asks Kenny Gaymore to come to DS9 to provide information about the Cardassian government in the revitalized dissident movement. Gul Dukat arrives and demands Gaymore's extradition. Clay, welcome back to the show. How are you? I feel like if you didn't notice, my intro is way off there. It feels like it's been 3 months since we did a DS9 episode, but I think it's only been a couple of weeks. But how are you anyway?
I'm good. Yeah, when I was watching this, it felt like I hadn't watched it in a long time, which made me that much more thankful when Dax was like, remember a handful of episodes ago where you were total recalled as this guy's daughter? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, thank you. Yes, I would not have remembered that at all if you hadn't said that.
I think you watched this episode, so you might remember this guy. I don't know if you actually remember the episode or you just think that the information was good, but I think you watched this one.
I did, yes.
Okay, yeah.
As soon as she said it, I remembered it, but I would not have... It would have taken me a while to piece that together if they hadn't said anything.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same actor or not. I don't remember things that well, but it is Ties of Blood and Water. We're going to be dealing with another Kira storyline. We're going to be dealing with a little bit of an introduction of the Dominion thing is back again. So let's take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip, and then me and Clay are going to come back and we're going to break down Ties of Blood and Water.
No, you are the perfect person for the job. You're still popular on Cardassia. The people respect you. They'll listen to you.
It's not that simple.
We can make it work. We'll set up a government in exile here on the station. You could make regular transmissions into Cardassia, issue corrections to their propaganda, mobilize your old friends in the dissident movement.
Nerys, it's a good plan. But I can't help you.
Why?
I have Yarmfeld syndrome. It's terminal, Nerys. I'm dying.
So it's like you said, Clay, we've been doing Discovery, and then we've had a little bit of a busy stretch where we haven't been able to do our recordings, or mostly I haven't been able to do with the recordings because of my busyness, but
I've been recording them on my own and showing them to no one.
You got to get your takes piled up and then ship them off once you get that surplus going.
They're just for my personal collection where things get naughty.
We're back with Ties of Blood and Water, which...
Deep Space Nine.
I don't know if you remember the episodes too much preview to this, but we haven't dealt with... I
remember nothing.
We haven't dealt with the Dominion, really. This is the reintroduction of that kind of a storyline, because after the big double two-parter episode where everything went to hell in a handbasket and the Dominion joined the Cardassians, now we are finally moving back into that. The show always takes a little bit of a break after those big moments.
How many episodes have we not dealt with that? Because honestly, I remember that better than I remember anything else that's happened since that.
It's probably been about 3 or 4, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I don't know if you wanted to start there. Those are the two aspects of this. So you have the Cardassian and Dominion sort of coming to DS9, and then you've got the Kira thing, which it all ties together, but those are the two basic plots that you want to go to. I guess we can talk about Kira, because... it feels to me that the show does a pretty good job with Kira storylines at this point. I don't know if this one is as good as the one where the guy kept her in the darkness and the light thing, and he sort of was monologuing to her at the end. Although I think that this one is pretty good, and even the fact that I think they retcon her father's death a little bit, because I'm pretty sure they say that he died at the hands of Cardassian torturers, which doesn't seem to be the case here, although maybe that's...
Well, who's to say? Record keeping during that time was spotty at best.
And he was a little bit of an unreliable narrator. But I think that it's a... I think it's a good Kira storyline just because it brings back a character from the past. It ties up that relationship a little bit, and it sort of, it puts a new bit of perspective on Kira's growing up and what she was like during the Resistance and everything. I don't think it's anything earth-shattering, but I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. My issue with it was I was surprised at Kira's reaction to it seemed like they were retreading stuff a bit, because I was under the impression that Kira had kind of made peace with the way things work in wartime. Like, that's kind of how I felt like she was coming out of that the one where she got kidnapped when she was pregnant. Like you know, the lesson that she learned from that, or the lesson that they were trying to impart from that, I thought was kind of absent here, because as soon as it turned out, oh yeah, he was part of this raid that killed a bunch of Cardassians or Bajorans, she lost her shit on him. And I thought it was her being a little disingenuous based on how her character had moved in the last season or so. But I mean, I guess I don't know. I couldn't totally reconcile that position from her with the stuff that they were showing about her dad.
Yeah. You don't think
because
that she's...
clearly her... Go ahead.
Well, you don't think that she's just... I thought she was more upset about the fact that he had lied to her about it, and less about the fact that it was happening, although I could kind of see your point. It does feel like Kira kind of bounces on that point over and over again, and I think the last time we talked about Darkness and the Light, it was like, are the characters at a point in the series where their stories are starting to become a little bit repetitive over and over again? And I thought that they kind of got around it just by the fact that he had lied to her about it or not been forthright, and that she was looking for any kind of reason to get out of it. But if you thought it was more of a retread than that, I guess that's a fair opinion.
I mean, I guess if she was looking for any reason to get out of it, I don't know. I guess I wish they had played that up a little bit more. I mean, I know she was hesitant going into it, but it seemed like once she was there, she was good to go.
Yeah.
So to have her, you know what? I wish they had shown the fact that she wasn't there when her dad died earlier, because the stuff with her dad seemed like it was. I wasn't sure what was going on with it. At first, I thought the event that she gets all pissed off at, what's his name?
The Cardassian
guy?
To Kenny, or Gaymore, I guess is how his last name is Gaymore. Yeah.
I thought the event that he was involved in was what ended up killing her father, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
No.
If that were the case, I would have a little bit more. I would be okay. I can see why she would be all pissed off, but that's a little stock. But
yeah, it's stock. It's stock, but it does provide the motivation for not liking the father. I thought it was, to me, the big thing was they got to the end of the episode, and I was a little bit relieved that Kira just comes out and says why she ran away from her father, because I don't think the scene where she leaves her father is particularly... It's funny. I thought that Nana Visitor was really excellent in this episode, except for the moment where in the flashback, she leaves her father. And I don't think she does a good job in that scene of portraying what she's doing at that point. They don't have dialogue to back it up. So I was relieved at the end when she explains to Bashir that she ran away because she didn't want to deal with it, basically. Like, it was a cowardice move as opposed to any kind of vengeance factor that she was going for.
Yeah, I would argue that I don't even know if those flashbacks were necessary at all, except for the fact that they show where her father was buried for the nice, tie-up at the end there.
Yeah.
I would say that her speech about it is probably enough. It does more for the story than headbutting somebody to death in story does. Mm-hmm. I think it was believable. I don't know. Maybe it only works because of the flashbacks. I'm not sure, but the flashbacks weren't really doing anything for me, because they seemed kind of superfluous, and they weren't really getting across what was happening from her standpoint. Do you think that they were doing it that way specifically to make it just seem like it was sort of she's pissed off that because the Cardassians killed her dad thing? Like, so when, they set up that he's been injured and she's pissed off that the Cardassians have killed him, essentially. And so when, what's his name?
Gaymore. I think it's
Gaymore.
Yeah.
Gaymore of Thrones. Okay. When Gaymore tells, she finds out about Gaymore, then it's supposed to be like, firing off those old Cardassians killed my people things.
Yeah, right.
More than it is anything else really to do with what ends up being the emotional point of the show.
I guess it's funny. Maybe we disagree about it. I kind of like the flashbacks. There's a couple of weird little bits about it. Like the one thing I really like about it is that Avery Brooks directed this, and Avery Brooks continues to be a good director on this show,
Yeah.
I think. The one thing I thought was happening and was going to be really clever, but it actually doesn't happen, is when they bring her father in the first time and she's looking down on him on the stretcher, the camera doesn't show him immediately. And I thought what they were going to do was hide him from it and do some kind of like whatever the Cardassians did was too grotesque to like want to look at this guy. Like the camera doesn't want to look at him or anything. And I appreciated them staying on Kira because it was Kira's story. They do show the father eventually. But I think that the flashbacks to me are the more emotional story, interestingly, because I don't really get a lot of the connection with Gaymore, and that doesn't really like bring up a lot of like the emotion that I think the episode is built around. What I do like about the flashbacks is, you know, they bring back those characters that we know are Kira's friends that got blown up a couple episodes ago.
Yep.
Like you see him, and so there's this universe that you're familiar with, and you're aware of these characters. And I thought that the death of her father was more touching, and it tied into, because she reconciles her father, and you see the reconciliation, or you see the event that caused this sort of thing between her and her father, and then it ties into the death of her new father, her adopted Cardassian father. I thought it worked fairly well.
Yeah, I guess my issue with it is that I felt the opposite, because I didn't have any even though it's her father, and I mean that has a lot of weight to it just, you know, in and of itself. I didn't feel any connection to their relationship at all, because she's never shown up before.
Right. It's a little bit of a cheat. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the stuff that she's doing with Gaymore, it worked that time. I remembered it.
We're probably pronouncing his name wrong too. I just
whatever.
know.
Whatever. I don't care.
To Kenny.
To Kenny.
That's his first name.
I'm not going to get it. It's going to be Gaymore. I don't care what it is. It's Gaymore from here on out. The stuff she's doing with Gaymore, at least there is a history that you've seen there and a relationship that you are privy to.
Yeah.
So I like the father stuff as being as bolstering that main story, but I just didn't love the stuff that they gave you in those flashbacks. I don't know. I don't know what I would want them to do differently. I guess the point of them that she sums up at the end, I didn't feel
was worth spending
landed.
time. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it really landed. Because it was just watching it through until the end, unless this was the point. I felt that it was just an exploration of her being angry that her father was dead, not the fact that she was explicitly leaving so she would not have to deal with his death. Yeah,
well. But you'd agree that the ending reveals it to be that's the case, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's one of those weird episodes. Like everything is perfectly functional with it, and I think the script is actually pretty good, because I think that these two storylines dovetail together pretty nicely.
Yeah.
I'd agree that both storylines kind of feel like they're lacking something to me. Like neither one is really pushing it over the edge in terms of getting like an emotional response out of it. I think that Nana Visitor is like selling the hell out of everything that she's being asked to. But for some reason, I'm not really attached to Gaymore. And as you say, I've never met her father before. So that's all kind of operating on the, you know, I'm supposed to feel sad because it's this character's father who's died. And I think that it's, I don't know. So I appreciate it on a technical kind of level, and I think that they dovetail everything really nicely together at the end. And I think that for me, the weakest part is actually the Federation's need for Kira to be debriefed by this guy before he dies. And I don't really feel that kind of works like that. That feels very artificial to me, I suppose. And it's they do it because they need Dukat to come in and be afraid of how much information this guy is giving over. But it felt like a very writerly, like the Cardassians before they die, they give up all their secrets, and this guy's in enemy territory giving away secrets, and Kira's going to listen to all the secrets. It felt a little bit forced.
I actually liked that element of the story. What, forced or not, I wish they had kind of expanded on it a little bit more, because I think there's an interesting crisis there for Kira, being pushed into that kind of situation and having to deal with these emotions that she has. I wish that they had done a little bit more with that instead of just, had her be totally cool with it right off the bat. Because I find that to be a more interesting trigger for her emotions about her father than just having flashbacks, because she's actively trying to avoid this situation, but she's being forced into it, and even being forced into it is kind of sleazy based on the stuff that she has to do. So I would find that as a more interesting catalyst for all that stuff to come up than just flashbacks of how her dad got shot.
Yeah,
personally.
Yes, I'd agree that the flashbacks are a little bit disconnected in the sense that normally when you have a show like this, something triggers the flashback, and nothing really triggers her flashbacks here, as far as I remember. Like, you could say that seeing a Cardassian does this, but she's seen a lot of Cardassians to this point.
I was surprised by that too, because the first one happens when she's just talking to Sisko about having to do this thing, and then they just hard cut. Well, they do that thing where she kind of like walks stage, towards the camera,
front of the stage,
yeah, and just sort of like looks off into the distance, and they do the wavy line effect, and they they don't actually do that, but I mean.
she looks down, I think, and then when the flashback is over, she looks back up.
Like how memories work, like we've talked previously about how you have to disengage from real life and then actually relive the moment and then re-engage.
Yeah, she kind of does the look up and look down thing, and she has the memory that is obviously triggered out of nowhere. But I'd agree with you that her flashbacks are detached to the point that maybe this is what it is. You were kind of expecting the tie-in to be there sooner. Maybe, is that fair to say? Like, I feel that the ending ties everything up together, but you spend a good deal of the time wondering why she's having this flashback and why it amounts to anything in terms of this story.
Yeah, and I don't find that the information that you get by the end of that flashback ultimately tells you why, and I think that's why I find it sort of disqualifying.
Tells you why. Tells you what about why?
Like the story that she tells is giving you the information about why they're showing you the flashback, not the flashback itself.
Right.
So, which I feel like is a little bit. Is cheating a little bit.
Okay, I understand. So you feel instead of the flashback conveying her story at the end, you need her monologue at the end to explain what you've been watching this entire time.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not learning any new information about her. You're not learning any information pertinent to the story from the flashback until she says that stuff. And I guess whether or not you think that's fair play is up to you. I think the flashback should work in and of itself, and then what she says at the end should be able to bolster that. I don't think it should depend on what she says at the end.
Yeah, would you agree that comes down to my point about the big problem is the death of her father is not handled properly. Like the way that they film it does not convey what she's doing there, and I think that it's a combination of directing, acting, and scripting, actually, because the script never calls out. No one. She has that friend who's kind of like, "You sure you want to go?" And she's like, "Yeah," but they never highlight Kira's sensibility through the script. I don't think the acting really conveys a conflictedness that I think she's supposed to be feeling at that point, and I don't think the direction really captures that. Like the direction doesn't give the actors a chance to really convey that, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think they kind of hinder themselves a little bit too by having her reaction be the same both times in the flashback, because when he's dying, she's like, "Oh, let me go. I want to kill some people because they killed my dad." And then she comes back and they're like, "Your dad's dead," and she says, "Okay, let's go kill some more people."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
So I'm not sure what she's trying to avoid here, other than she's just being angry and taking it out on the Cardassians. In which case, I know she's going to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's a stock enough of a story or a character beat where I don't really I didn't have a memory of this episode, but I knew. My problem while watching it was like, I know that Kira is probably running away from responsibility here. Like, that's what they're trying to say, but it's not really being conveyed. And then I was very relieved at the end when it was conveyed that way. And, the ending where she goes back and accepts her responsibility in terms of Gamor feels good at that point. Like
Yeah.
I do like the mirroring of the fathers there, and like not being able to be there for your first father, so you're there for your adoptive father later on is kind of comeuppance or a kind of reconciliation of how you feel about all that stuff. I just the sad thing, I guess, is that I don't have the sense of the relationship that she has with Gaymore that would back up her father or like support her father's feelings. Like, it doesn't feel like the relationship between Kira and Gaymore is at a strength level enough where I feel like it's even, if that makes any sense. Like, I understand the sacrifice and what she's choosing to do, but that storyline doesn't strike me as very sad, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the time they spent together in that last episode did not exactly make me feel like they were going to be, writing letters to each other once they parted ways.
Yeah.
Or keeping in contact at all. I was just thinking, I wonder, I think the problem in the flashbacks, why that element doesn't really track, is I think it would track better if it was just a straight 1-to-1, and instead of her father being shot and dying, if he was just sick and dying.
Yep.
Because that way, if he's sick and dying, and then she is choosing to go off and fight these guys, if he's sick and dying, and then she is somehow rationalizing his illness with the Cardassians, so that's why she's going off to kill them or something. Like, he's sick and he can't be brought to a hospital because the town is occupied by Cardassians, some shit like that.
Yep.
So that way, it's not a 1-to-1, they killed my father, no, I'm going to kill them. Now she's basically making an excuse now.
But you don't think that's mirrored in the fact that she runs away from her father under the pretext of getting revenge against the Cardassians, and the reason she abandons Gamor is because he's a Cardassian. See, I think that's the mirroring right there, where Cardassians are both reasons why she tries to run away from what she needs to do.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't find it particularly satisfying. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
I mean, Odo does a good job of exposing how it's almost comical, because I think the way that he exposes the irrational anger she has towards Gaymore at the end, where he's like, he was 19, he'd been there for like 3 months. I don't even have proof that he like shot a single bullet or anything like that. It kind of comes across as almost a joke that she's reacting that way, but I think it's intentionally done that way. It's just, it doesn't have the gravitas to it. Like, she's really stretching in her rationale for doing what she's trying to do by running away there at the end with some weak evidence. Yeah, and I thought that scene was good. I like that scene a lot. It's just the flashback just doesn't do this, doesn't support the main thing the way that I think it should. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Personally.
It's also a cave set. It's very difficult to pay attention to Star Trek cave sets. But they do establish the burial ground, which they nicely don't really call attention to at the end. They don't say, well, Dad, now you've got a buddy laying down next to you. Yeah. Which is what I expected. The other aspect of it that I think they tie in pretty well, and I actually kind of liked, and I don't think that they stressed really much at all, is the new conflict between the Federation, the Dominion, and the Cardassians, and how all of that really works. And I think that it's I don't know if Avery Brooks does his best work in this episode, but I think that everyone else is doing a pretty good job. I like Dukat. We got Weyoun is back. If you were wondering how Weyoun comes back, here he is.
Yeah, they just straight landfilled him, huh? Basically.
They did. And he's a little bit of a different Weyoun than we saw earlier. This is not my favorite version of Weyoun, I don't think. Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time that Avery Brooks directed this, but now after you said that, I was like, oh, I bet he had his thumb on the Weyoun scale, because Weyoun definitely feels like he's a couple ticks away from making some very strange noises.
Yeah, Weyoun. I would describe this character as the kind of character who sits on a chair that's too big and his legs swing like he's swinging.
Yes.
Like he has sort of a childish approach to things, and they fix this eventually. This is not the way he is portrayed the rest of the way, but it is a very strange departure from the way that he was. I don't know if it was supposed to be Weyoun the entire time. They just like Combs enough what they wanted to bring him back, and this is the way that they do it. The one thing I will say, they do a lot of There's one moment in particular I really like from it where Dukat is talking to Sisko about how the Cardassians have once you join the Dominion, it's not all that bad. Dukat has that kind of thing. He's like, we have a lot of autonomy and all this stuff, and like we're allowed to do what we want to do. It's a lot of freedom. It's like, no, it's not nearly as bad as you're trying to make it seem. But then when he comes into the DS9 office with Weyoun, he has and this is my advisor, Weyoun, which I think is a really subtle way of portraying, not to spoil anything, but the way that they convey the relationship between the Dominion and the Cardassians going forward. And I think it's just it's obviously not the freedom that Dukat is trying to sell early on in the episode.
Right. Yeah, I actually liked Weyoun because he was definitely different, but I read it as him being essentially like he's a new clone, so he's kind of young.
Yes.
So I read him as just a little more immature. So it makes sense that he would kind of even out going forward.
He does seem like he's spending a lot of the episode observing how these two interact with each other too. Like he's trying to sort of understand how Dukat goes about things, I think, because he spends a lot of the episode looking and sort of listening and seeming surprised by the way that Dukat approaches subjects like this.
Yeah, and I liked how he just knocked back that thing of poison. That was pretty fun.
That's one of those unnecessary species facts that it doesn't really feel authentic in how you're going to bring it up, but he's just like, yeah, I can drink poison. I'm a bureaucrat. Comes in handy. It's good for me.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know if you had anything else that you thought about those. I like the sense of Dukat trying to stop this guy from talking too much, and I really like the way that it ends in a very Cardassian thing of like, well, we're going to tell the people he died honorably, basically, didn't say anything, and he'll have a full state burial, and no one will know the truth, and no one will be the wiser for it.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting in that last bit with Sisko, as Dukat was leaving, I thought he was going to say something about like, give my regards to whatever the name of Dukat's arch nemesis was. That kind of thing.
Oh, that general that they're talking, the other Gul that they're talking about. Is that
just give him a little rib, being like, we got the information that you don't want us to know.
That's a good call too. Yeah. No, they don't do that. They end it with more of the button of Dukat says something, and Weyoun has the sort of, it's no simple, as you say, it's a simple matter to fix or something. Just the implication being there that the Cardassian state is overpowering in terms of what the information will get out to its people. And this guy's death won't really amount to much because they'll have covered it up, basically.
Yeah. The one thing I did like that I like that they keep the Dominion stuff fresh in your mind by mixing up the group of people that are together at one time and like the ships they come in on. Like I like that Dukat showed up on a Jem'Hadar ship, and behind him on the view screen was a Jem'Hadar and a Cardassian. Yeah, right. And then he shows up with the Vorta. So I like that they are making sure where the allegiances are by mixing up who's on screen at the same time. That made sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually liked the shot of the. It was a pretty threatening shot of the ship approaching the station, which they never, which it doesn't really always work that way. But I thought it was pretty effective.
Yeah, I like that shot a lot. It was, it was very opening of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's with the what are those things? The Imperial cruiser or the Star Destroyers or whatever. Star Destroyers. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Anything else that we want to talk about with this one? I would describe this one as a Kira episode that's pretty okay, although I don't know how many more of these Kira war stories I have in me or the show has in it, because I don't want to sound too harsh either, because I thought this one had something to say about Kira running away from responsibility that was interesting. Like they haven't broached that, but it is yet another Cardassian war story featuring Kira.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that it wasn't exactly going back to the well, but it felt like it was, because she seems to have evolved, and they even kind of bring attention to it at the beginning in a different manner.
Oh, that's true.
When Dax says like, you should have met her 3 years ago, she didn't like anybody.
Yeah.
So like to have her change so much and then kind of backpedal a little bit was a little bit annoying. I felt like they could have done the same story without exactly having her fall back onto her prior prejudices the exact same way.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, maybe that's kind of the point of the story, I guess. But yeah, I'll be interested. Yeah, I don't know how many more of these they got in them, unless you've got. I don't know. Does Chakar ever team up with the Cardassians? Because I feel like you could get like 30 minutes of flashback out of that episode.
We need more flashbacks of Chakar.
When do we find out when he gets trapped in the candle?
That'll be this upcoming Discovery storyline. We're going to, I guess.
Oh my God! I hope they bring I will take back every negative thing I have ever said about Discovery if they may have a Sub Rosa callback. Where it turns out Tilly's in love with a candle ghost. Oh my God!
She would be
the
character, wouldn't she? Yeah,
100%.
I guess we'll just take a break. We'll play an audio clip. Me and Clay will come back. We're going to give our final thoughts and read some patron thoughts about Ties of Blood and Water.
Captain Sisko, thank you for the kind invitation. This is one of my Dominion advisors, Wei-Yun.
We've met. I saw you die.
That wasn't me. At least not exactly.
The Vorta are experts at cloning.
It tends to mitigate the risk involved in so much of our work. My predecessor was the fourth incarnation of our noble progenitor. I'm the fifth.
Immortality.
Of a sort. Interested?
All right, so that's it for Ties of Blood and Water. If you want to support the show, you go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile. And you can do a couple $1 a month. You get extra stuff. And you also, if you're a captain level supporter, get a shout out here at this point. We want to thank Stephen Cobb, Yarpy, Sean, Captain Quark, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, David K, Nick Sergi, Nathan Elliott, Michael Pond, Matthew Cutler, Will Yates, Matt Flores, Samuel Custer, Grim Santo, Robert Cummins, Andrew Sherlock, Spinobi, Russ Graham, Decker Sebastiani, Bradley Killens, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Ben Douglas, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, and Tarek Latif. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. So, Clay, let's go to patron thoughts. If you support the show on Patreon, you also get to leave your thoughts about the episodes, and we read them on the show. Zam Nuclear Wessel says, Ties of Blood and Water, another redo of Duet, and again doing it well. Kira using the occupation as an excuse to avoid emotional moments is a great touch, and the Now Visitor really plays it. It's nice when she gets the chance to do something complex. I'd agree about the acting thing. Go ahead. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know if I would say I guess he's not necessarily saying it's as good as Duet, because I do not think that.
No, he just says redo. So
yeah, I guess.
I mean, she does have a lot of the two Kira storylines, right? They're either pretty good Kira deals with a Cardassian story, or they're bad relationship stories. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like there's no. Kira doesn't have a lot. She had that pregnancy thing too, but they barely even touched on that. Like there's not a lot of room for Kira to go in, and I think that the show is making kind of a mistake with her about not branching her stories out a little bit more than this. I feel she's really the character I noticed the most whose story feels repetitive at this point.
Does she ever fall in love with a Cardassian?
No, not that I can think of.
Well, I feel like they left some money on the table.
Yeah,
there
you think that's the natural endpoint for her story? She falls in love and gets married with a Cardassian.
Well, not necessarily get married, but I feel like that's the one angle that they haven't explored is like, well, what happens if she actually meets a Cardassian that she can fall in love with?
Well,
or you know,
they're not having sex without getting married, Clay. Are you implying that they're going to have relations without being married to each other?
Well, I don't know what she and Shakar have been doing, but they're not playing Parcheesi, I can tell you that much.
The baby was beamed into her. Let's see here. So...
Yeah, it sure was.
So, Ties... Holly McLaughlin says, Ties of Blood and Water. This is a great one. Kira's moral judgment is a bit overdone, given how dirty she got her own hands during the war, but that's my only complaint. Lots of complicated motives and shades of gray, which is DS9 at its best. Norman Buchwald says, this is a great episode, mainly because of the return of Wei-Yun and the strangest line exchange ever. Kira, you really are enjoying this, aren't you? Dukat, I must admit, I do get a certain perverse pleasure out of it. I wish there was something more to the past relationship between Gamor and Kira, ideally maybe something that better bridges second skin in this episode. The past memory of Kira and her father, I guess, seemed fine. I somehow wish this would have been brought back again in Wrongs Darker Than Night if that latter episode had to happen. I think that the episode would have benefited from seeing this guy since Second Skin again. I think that would have only served to help. I don't know if they had really planned out this sort of arc. I doubt it. But seeing him again one more time probably would have added a little bit to their relationship, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, he kind of comes out of nowhere in this one. It does seem like one of those things where they've got this list of characters who are side characters, and they're like, well, we don't need these guys that often. We can just kill one of these guys off.
Right. Yeah. Is this actor available? Matthew Ross says Ties of Blood and Water.
Get me Tom Riker.
a sweet, sad story that probably could have saved some time if Gaymore put his information on a USB key or something. One thing was that guy's sweater drove me nuts. I know you're old, but geez, too much fuzz on that thing. How the hell did the big battleship nonchalantly just show up and no one notice? Was that Excelsior below asleep? They really had to wait for Cisco to go to red alert? Jeffrey Combs and Marco Lamo are a perfect pair for the show and exemplified as foils to Avery Sisko. Dukat is at his most conniving. Wayun's downing the poison made me laugh then as now. And that aside, the sadness of loss of a relative or anyone close was heartbreaking to watch as Kira struggled through her father and her adopted father's deaths.
I was gonna say there was the scene where Bashir calls Kira to the room because he's taking a turn for the worst. And she comes in, and Bashir's standing there with that like IV cuff in his hand. I was really hoping he was going to say, yes, it turns out if you put this on over someone's shirt, it's effectively useless.
You did kill him. He is dead. I was thinking when Kira starts doing the thing, like, and she's opening up her care of this, and she spills the water on the guy, and she can't get the machine to work right because he's like yelling in pain and everything. Mm-hmm. He should have just been like, maybe you should bring that nurse in here. Yeah. Maybe we should have a professional be present for this. Kyle
it's like in the movies where you got a guy in a wheelchair who can't like feel his legs, and then you're always like dripping hot. Naked Gun 2, yes. The guy in the wheelchair, and they used to like dripping hot soup into his crotch, and like accidentally throwing knives into his leg.
That's right. Kyle Barrett says, I wasn't really feeling this episode for a lot of its runtime. Sure, Wayun and Dukat are great, but I didn't buy this fatherly relationship that Kira has with the Cardassian guy we saw in that one episode I completely forgot about. But the scene with Kira and Bashir near the end of the episode blew me away, and Visitor's acting was some of the best I've seen on the show. It's also nice that they let the writing and performances do all the emotional work, and the scene was free of the music that lets you know it's time to cry from certain other modern TV shows.
It's kind of funny? You know how some people only call each other by their last names? Like, yep. we have multiple friends with the same first name, so yes. And using the last name. If you called her by her last name, it would constantly sound like you were talking to like an alien. Hello, visitor. Please come in.
Oh, I see. I thought you were talking
visitor,
about...
please stay for a while.
It's a very B-budget 80s sci-fi movie, I think. Yes. Hello, visitor. Hello, visitor. Neil Brennan says, Ties of Blood and Water. Oh, he agrees with you, Clay. I didn't need the flashbacks. I don't know what it is, but the actors they cast as Bajoran freedom fighters never look like freedom fighters. They're a bit portly. They're well-fed freedom fighters, I think. Yes. That's it. Thank you for leaving your comments, guys. It's much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the show on patreon.com/the Pensky File. And now, Clay, we're going to go to our final thoughts about Ties of Blood and Water. Neither of us, I would describe us as excited about this episode, I suppose. So why don't you go first with your rating on 1 to 5?
Yeah, that was fine. I'll give it a 3.
Yeah.
Middle of the road.
Yeah.
It works. It works when it has to. I mean, I can give, not that I would say this is a bad episode because it's not, but it's fairly uneventful.
Yes.
But I think the uneventful ones can be saved sometimes if they really stick the landing, and I think they really stick the landing on this one.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say it's a strong 3.
Yeah, I'd give it a 3 as well. It's kind of the opposite of, remember the Odo episode where he has the baby changeling that dies?
Yes.
It's kind of the opposite of that. It's like where that episode didn't really get the ending to work out to either of our, like, what we thought was going to happen. This one kind of is like middling for most of it, and then the ending is like, oh, okay, like you really brought that all together.
Yeah, was there like, what was the head writer this season just listening to Cats in the Cradle on a loop for like the entire duration of writing this season? There's a lot of There's a lot of father issues in this season.
Yeah, there are. There's a lot of we don't really know a lot of the fathers either. Well, in Cisco and whatever, yeah, but Odo had his father, and then Bashir had his parents come out and everything like that. Yeah, so there are a lot of father activities.
I'd like to see a scene with Odo, Kira, Bashir, and Worf when they're all, just bitching about father stuff, and then Worf is like, I don't care, I don't know where my son is. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't exist anymore.
What's a father?
Where is his son anyway?
He'll be around. We'll see him. Alexander will be around at some point. I think that's it. I'm going to give it a 3 as well. There's nothing really wrong with this episode. It just doesn't really blow me away, and I think it's a little bit repetitive on the Kira front at this point.
Does he show up as like, Patton Oswalt has a bit where he talks about how being into all the stuff that he's into, like comics and writing and Blade Runner trivia and all that kind of stuff, was his way of rebelling against his normal parents. Mm-hmm. So he's afraid that his daughter is going to rebel against him by just being like really good at accounting.
Right, really straight.
And is that how Alexander comes back? Like he wants to, where Worf is a hipster Klingon, Alexander comes back and he's all about like wearing, human fashion. And showing that he's he wishes he was a human.
No, I wouldn't go that far. But I don't think you'll be surprised by the way Alexander shows up. Actually, I think we've talked about it. I think you nailed it when you previously predicted what Alexander would be like, but you don't remember that much, like you don't remember Second Skin.
I do not. I'm sure someone does though, because I don't. As soon as it comes out of my mouth, it's gone.
They'll let you know. That's it. We got Ferengi love songs as the next episode. And I think that's pretty much it. And
those are close together Ferengi episodes. They are. They better deliver.
We are. I don't know if you've read it in the YouTube comments. This is a lull in this season. We've had about 5 or so episodes that have not been particularly interesting. And we're going to get out of it eventually, but we have to get through a couple Ferengi episodes first.
Again, it's amazing that you can do that back then.
Just like imagine
if we were watching something now, covering something now, and it's like, the past 5 episodes have been kind of boring and, forgettable.
Yeah.
You'd be like, this is the worst season of TV I've watched in years.
Yeah. Well, I think we just kind of pare it down. Now we go, well, this Netflix show had a bad 2 episodes in the middle, and those could have been cuts. And it is. It's all averages. It always just surprises me when they go on streaks, sort of like there's no reason that you wouldn't have a streak of a couple bad episodes or a couple great episodes in a row. But it always strikes me as very weird when you have a pretty prolonged stretch where nothing is really above average for you. It's just kind of the way that the cards fell. But Ferengi love songs are the next episode. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
I don't think so. No, I think I'm good.
All right. I'm done as well, I think. I'll be trying to do the Deadwood coverage to catch up with that. It's a super busy time. I started a new job, so things are a little bit hectic here. We're going to have Discovery, the last episode of Discovery, Clay, which I'm very excited about, both in terms of the content of the episode and it being the last Discovery of the season that we have to do on Fridays will be nice. And look forward to that. And Amy Adams' Real Ripe and Real Rotten will be coming out. Coolio comes out the same day as this, I think. We did Gangster's Paradise for Radio Star Murders. That'll come out on Wednesday, which this episode is going to come out on tomorrow, whatever, today. I think that's it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show, and we'll see you next time.